What's the worst thing you think could happen to your daughter when she leaves home for college? A bad grade, a messy breakup, a heated argument. As for me, I thought I was prepared for all of that until the day she came home with a $3,000 camera, a radiant smile, and a secret I never dared imagine. A university professor, private artistic photo shoots, thousands of dollars in invoices from anonymous collectors, and then a confession that shattered our entire family. I'm pregnant, and it's his. But this isn't just a story about betrayal or a predator hiding behind the veil of art. This is the story of a father who refused to stay silent, of a group of parents who turned their silence into action, and of a young woman brave enough to rise to speak and to take back her life. If you've ever believed that the truth never wins, today's story will make you think again. Chapter 1: The $3,000 Camera and the Daughter Who Was No Longer Herself. I still vividly remember the day Zara, my daughter, walked into the house with a beaming smile and a brand new Canon R5 camera in her hand. It wasn't just the camera either. There were professional studio lights, a tripod L-series lenses. The total must have been close to 3 grand, if not more. She proudly claimed it was all learning equipment sponsored by Professor Killian through a special mentorship program. My wife and I looked at each other, then at her, and at that moment, I felt proud. My daughter, a freshman in photography, had barely been at the university for a short while, and she'd already impressed someone this much. Zara had always been a humble, down-to-earth kid. Jeans, t-shirts, her hair tied back, she never cared for clothes or makeup. But just a few weeks after receiving the gift, I started to feel like something was off. She began dressing completely differently. Tight-fitting dresses, high heels, deep red lipstick, like she was about to pose for the cover of a fashion magazine. She said it was her new, artistic style to fit into the industry. But it wasn't just the wardrobe. Zara suddenly had a lot of cash. Her wallet had several stacks of $100 bills, and when I asked, she said she was freelancing as a photographer. And those designer handbags, vintage gifts from Professor Killian, she said. Sure gifts. And when I asked to see what photos she'd been working on lately, she avoided the question, saying she was working on a private project. She used to love showing me her photos. Now everything was secret. I brought it up with a few other parents at the school's parent meeting. When I mentioned the special mentorship program with Professor Killian, most looked confused. But one mother, the mom of Indian art student from last year, her face went pale, and she quickly changed the subject. I couldn't shake the weird feeling. Why would a mother react like that just from hearing her child's professor mentioned? That night, I quietly searched for Indy's Facebook. The account was deleted. On the school website, her name was no longer listed among current students. She had transferred for personal reasons. I started getting nervous. It felt like I was piecing together a puzzle no one wanted to see completed. A few days later, I decided I wasn't going to wait any longer. I would pay my daughter a surprise visit. One Thursday afternoon, I showed up outside her dorm with a box of her favorite pastries, and then I saw him, Killian, coming out of the building. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair a mess, and he walked like someone sneaking away from something shameful. He didn't see me, but I saw more than enough. I knocked on Zara's door. She answered with wet hair and a thin silk robe. It was 2 p.m. On her desk was a chaotic mess of printed photos, papers, and envelopes. But they weren't landscape or portrait shots like I'd expected. They were nude photographs, and the person in the photos was my daughter. Each image had been color graded, carefully composed. These weren't just for fun. There were shipping envelopes addressed to private collectors. There were invoices for photos sold for thousands of dollars. A whole world I had no idea existed right inside the dorm room of the girl I thought was innocent and safe. I just sat there frozen, looking at Zara, at the papers, at the sharp, naked images printed out on the desk. It wasn't the nudity that shook me, it was the deception. The smell of the truth was rising, and I knew this was only the surface of something much, much darker. Chapter 2. The Photos, the Denials, and the Distorted Truth. What the hell are you doing, Zara? I barely recognized my own voice when I spoke. It wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was choked with emotion. Zara stood there, her hands clutching the tie of her silk robe, her eyes flickering between the photo-covered desk and my face. Then, after a brief moment of hesitation, she laughed. Dad, don't make a big deal out of this. This is art. It's a semester project. It's how I'm building my reputation. I turned toward the desk and picked up a printed invoice, $5, $200. Large, format print limited edition model Z. Another letter was addressed to Edgar S., private collector. No company, no gallery, just a residential address. You're selling these photos to private collectors? Nude photos. And you're telling me this is art? Zara sighed as if I were some backward old man insulting a Renaissance master. You don't get it. In the world of fine art, photography nudes are a respected genre. Professor Killian believes I have a special gift. The people buying these are real collectors. They're investing in young talent. This is a professional path. I was stunned, not because she took nude photos, but because she believed all of it. She truly believed this was a career opportunity, believed that having a professor more than 20 years older gift her expensive equipment, arrange private studio sessions, and send her images to anonymous collectors was all perfectly normal. And then something inside me snapped. Not anger, fear. Fear that the daughter I'd once known, obedient, smart, grounded, was now lost in a web she didn't even realize she was caught in. That night, I called Indy's mother, the one who had gone pale at the mention of Killian. She didn't deflect this time. Her voice trembled, choked with emotion. He did the same to my daughter, called it mentorship, gave her equipment, then lured her into private studio sessions. By the time I found out Indy wasn't herself anymore, she wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, locked herself in her room for weeks. I had to move her away just to try to forget, but she never really did. I ended the call, my heart hollowed out. Zara wasn't a special case. She was one link in a chain that had started long ago. I went home and printed every email, photo, and note I could find. All of it pointed to one conclusion: Zara was being manipulated. And I, the father who thought he was protecting his child now, had to face the truth. I was already too late. The following evening, I sat across from her at the dinner table. I laid out everything I had about Indy, about the patterns, about how Killian chose students with financial struggles, low confidence, those seeking guidance, about the gifts, about the isolation. Zara looked at me with tear-filled eyes, but instead of breaking down, she cried, not in realization, but in rage. You don't understand, he's not like that. He believes in me. He's helping me build my career. He loves me. That sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. Love, a freshman student, a man 20 years older with power over her. Her professor, Zara, stood up, grabbed the folder of documents and threw it to the floor. Papers scattered like shattered pieces of trust. You think I'm stupid, but I know what I'm doing. I'm not a victim. I chose this. You can't stop me. She stormed upstairs, slamming the door so hard the entire house shook, and me. I sat there holding my wife's hand. Neither of us said a word. We both knew this moment had changed everything. Our daughter wasn't just being manipulated. She'd been convinced she was in love with a predator. And that was the most terrifying part of all. Chapter 3. The Child in the Shadows and the Collapse of Self-Deception. The house fell into an eerie silence after the door slammed shut. No more arguments, no more footsteps. Just my wife and I sitting together in the kitchen, like two shadows waiting for a storm that hadn't yet been named. I wanted to rush upstairs, to tell my daughter I wasn't angry, wasn't disappointed, that I was just trying to save her from someone she couldn't see was a predator. But I did nothing, because I knew. Any words now would only make Zara retreat further into defense, so we just sat there in silence, until her door opened. Zara came down barefoot, her face swollen and red from crying, but the fire in her was gone. Her expression had changed. No more rage, just emptiness. She sat in the chair across from us, head down. Her trembling hand rested on the table as she quietly let out her first words. I think I'm pregnant. Those words crushed my chest like a vice. My wife went rigid beside me, grabbing my hand like it was the only thing tethering her to a nightmare. I tried to keep my voice calm. Zara, are you sure? She nodded. Very faintly. I took 3 tests. All of them were positive. I think I'm about 8 weeks along. I don't think I've ever felt more powerless in my life. 1,000 questions exploded in my mind. Had she seen a doctor yet? Did Killian know what had he done? When did this all even begin? But I didn't ask. Instead, I stood up, walked around to the back of her chair, and placed my hand gently on her shoulder. And Zara, my little girl, the one I used to carry in my arms when she was learning to walk, collapsed into my chest and sobbed. I was so stupid. I didn't see it. He tricked me. I thought it was love. I thought he meant it. I held her tight. Every sob from her carved deeper into my heart. My wife came over, wrapping her arms around both of us. 3 people, one small kitchen, sharing a pain none of us had ever imagined we'd have to face. After calming down, Zara started to talk. She told us she had gone through all the messages between her and Killian after storming upstairs. She began realizing he never once said I love you unless it came with a gift. And whenever she hesitated on a bolder photo shoot, he'd pressure her with lines like, "You're not being professional. You're not serious enough. You'll miss your one shot at this." He had never given her a real choice. Every word, every gift, every compliment had been a silk-wrapped shackle. I remember one day I said I didn't want to do the shoot. He gave me a pill, said it had helped me calm down. I didn't ask what it was, but after that, my mind felt like it drifted away. I still did the shoot, but I wasn't really there. And now looking back, she couldn't finish. I looked down and realized my hand was gripping the edge of the table until it had turned white. This wasn't just between consenting adults. This was abuse, emotional coercion, a series of disgusting violations disguised as art. Zara choked out, "I ruined everything." Didn't I? I shook my head. No, sweetheart, you've been hurt, and now you're strong enough to face the truth. That's not weakness, it's bravery. We spent the rest of the night talking, not to make any decisions, but to reconnect, to come back together as a family. Zara said she wanted to keep the baby even knowing how hard everything would be. I don't want to let him take anything else from me. If this child is mine, I'll raise it with real love. Not control. Not manipulation. My wife and I looked at each other. We were both terrified, but we understood. This was her decision, and we would walk beside her no matter where the road led. The next morning, I woke up with a single, unwavering thought: I will not let Killian destroy another girl ever again. Chapter 4, The Father's Circle, Silent Evidence, and the War in the Shadows begins. The next morning, I woke up early. Coffee in hand, my mind still in turmoil. I looked over at the dining table, the very spot where my daughter had cried her heart out the night before over a truth no one should ever have to bear. The unborn child was growing inside a belly that hadn't yet known peace. My wife was cleaning up the kitchen, her eyes betraying deep worry. And me, I was making a plan. Professor Killian wasn't clueless. He was a calculated predator. And everything Zara had shared confirmed one thing: she wasn't his only victim. I picked up the phone and called Indy's mom. "I need to see you. Alone. It's urgent." We met at a small cafe downtown. She arrived with tired eyes but a steely gaze. I told her everything: Zara's photos, the pregnancy, the manipulation, the pills that made her lose control. Indy's mom gripped her coffee cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. "He gave Indy pills too," she said. "I can't be certain, but she once told me." There were photo shoots she couldn't even remember. It felt like breathing in poison. He had done this before many times, with a formula. And he was still out there free. We need others, I said. We need to find out who else he's hurt. We started calling other families she knew whose daughters had studied under Killian. Within 2 days, I had spoken with 4 other parents. Each story was disturbingly similar: expensive sponsored equipment, special praise, private shoots, sudden changes in behavior, and then silence. Gaps, whispers no one ever said out loud. One father, Sebastian, told me his daughter had been pressured to sign an image rights contract that clearly stated the model agrees to share distribution rights for commercial artistic purposes. When she tried to back out, Killian threatened to sue. We formed a private group, unofficially called the Fathers of Daughters, still waiting for justice. No banners, no press. We needed a plan. One father was a programmer. He created an encrypted online folder where we could all upload evidence photos, contracts, messages, bank records, even gifts Killian had sent. The deeper we dug, the more sickened I became. Nothing about this was random. He chose girls with financial struggles, emotional instability, or those new to campus, anyone looking for someone to believe in them. He pulled them into a vortex of flattery, privileges, art, and control. When they hesitated or questioned him, he threatened them. When they tried to leave, he found ways to silence them. And Zara was still being watched by him. She started getting texts from unknown numbers. Some were sweet. You are my entire world. Others were terrifying. You really think you can ruin my career and still sleep peacefully? One time he even sent an ultrasound photo, followed by the message, "We'll raise it together, our artistic family." Zara nearly threw up on the spot. We had to disconnect the landline. My wife took a leave from work to stay home. We changed all the locks. I installed security cameras around the house. Every car that parked near our gate made my chest tighten. And then Zara started to doubt herself. Some days she raged, demanding we expose Killian. Other days she fell silent and whispered, "What if?" He really did love me. I knew what was happening. Gaslighting. Love bombing. He was still pulling the strings. And my daughter was caught in the middle of it. One afternoon, while Zara was sleeping, I quietly opened her laptop. I don't regret it. On the hard drive were hundreds of photos, far more than I'd seen before. Some crossed every imaginable line. But the worst were the contracts Zara had signed. They clearly stated all rights to distribution, usage, and ownership belonged to Killian Media Group. And that wasn't all. In her inbox, I found emails between Killian and men claiming to be collectors. They spoke about the girls like they were selecting fine wine. This one has an innocent face but a seductive body, just the kind of look our German VIP client likes. I wanted to smash the laptop, but I didn't. I took screenshots of everything, backed up every file, and the next morning I called every father in the group. "It's time," I said. "We can't wait anymore. Friday night we meet. There's something we have to do." Chapter 5: The Night Break-In and The Files of the Hunted Daughters. Friday night I left the house around 1 a.m. Zara was asleep. My wife didn't ask anything. She just looked at me with eyes full of worry, then handed me the fully charged backup phone and an extra memory card. She knew there are things a father must do, even if it means stepping outside the law. I drove to campus to the old meeting point just outside the art building. The entire structure was swallowed in darkness, with only a few dim lights glowing in the distance. Sebastian and Craig, 2 other fathers, were already waiting. The look in their eyes was unmistakable, not just anger, but the fury of men who had once felt helpless and now refused to feel that way again. Craig brought a keycard his daughter, once Killian's teaching assistant, still had before she transferred out. We had mapped out the guard patrol times, camera blind spots, even emergency door codes. Every step was planned down to the minute. 2:08 a.m. We passed through the main door of the art department. The third-floor hallway was eerily silent. Killian's office was at the end of the corridor. The door had an electronic lock, but the card still worked. A soft beep sounded. The door clicked open. The smell hit me first: old paper, ink, and something cold, as if the room was harboring horrors no one had dared name. We used small LED camera technician flashlights, the kind that doesn't bounce light off windows. Each of us took a section. Then Sebastian called out in a whisper, "Over here." Beneath the desk was a filing cabinet. Inside were folders labeled with names of girls: Zara, Indy, Clara, Mia, Elise. Each name was accompanied by a collection of documents, printed photos, in escalating levels, starting with standard portraiture, then semi-nude, full nude, and eventually things I can't put into words. There were handwritten contracts and disturbing personal notes like single mother, easily manipulated. Type 2 anxiety meds, docile. Tends to self-blame, exploit guilt. Zara's folder was in the center, blue cardstock cover. He had written middle-class family, conservative father, frame it as, "You're the only one who understands me." Gave her first camera after peer fallout. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I photographed everything, page by page. We knew we had to leave soon. But then Craig, whose daughter once nearly attempted suicide, found a hidden drawer in the desk. He opened it. Inside were several USB drives, each labeled with a girl's name and date, and one black leather-bound notebook. The notebook didn't just document Killian's income from art photography. It recorded transactions, names of buyers, zip codes, prices, over $200,000 in just 2 years, laundered through secondary accounts. We didn't take anything, just took photos, noted positions, and left exactly at 2:48 a.m. Out in the parking lot, none of us spoke. We just looked at one another, no words needed. We all understood this was no longer a personal tragedy. This was an operation, a system, a network that had exploited our daughters. The next morning, I didn't sleep. I sat in my study, going through every photo, every contract. I needed to be sure before stepping into a bigger battle that we had all the ammo we needed. Zara walked in and saw me. She didn't ask. She just sat beside me, eyes on the screen, looking at documents she once naively signed. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from fury. "Now I believe you," she said. "I want to help. I won't be silent anymore." I nodded. We won't be silent. None of us. Chapter 6. The Coffee Shop Trap and the Predator Who Buried Himself. We knew that paper evidence alone wouldn't be enough. If we wanted Killian to fall, he had to open his mouth and do it himself. Willingly. Zara told me that a close friend at school, Lexi, had just received a message from Killian. He offered to meet Lexi privately to talk about Zara and promised $5,000 if she could convince Zara to come back to him. A man who's confident doesn't offer money to meet his ex. An innocent man doesn't bribe her friends. But a man who knows he's about to lose everything will do anything. So we made a plan. Lexi would agree to meet Killian at a busy cafe near campus. She'd wear a recording device. Parents would sit at surrounding tables posing as customers. A group of moms would stand outside near the door just in case he tried anything. Lexi was tougher than she looked. She agreed without hesitation. Wednesday morning, I arrived early. The cafe was full but not noisy. I sat in the back right corner, Sebastian across the room, and Craig near the window. We exchanged glances, no words needed. At exactly 9:58 a.m., Killian walked in. He wore a leather jacket, his hair slicked back carefully, but his face showed the decline. He looked thinner, hollow-eyed. He kept glancing around like he knew something was off. He sat down in front of Lexi and began. Zara is misunderstanding everything he said in that low, fake moral tone, like he was defending himself before a jury. What we had was real, not some cliche teacher-student thing. It was a soul connection. Lexi nodded, pretending to sympathize. "So, if I help convince her?" Killian leaned down, pulled a crisp wad of bills from his pocket. $5,000 right now, if Zara agrees to meet me. And another 10 if you can get us a loan. Lexi asked gently, "Have you done this with other girls before?" He smiled, a sickening, proud smile. "Yes." But Zara's different. The others, some fit, some didn't. Zara is special. I love her. I want the baby. Lexi froze. You know about that. I know everything. One of your friends told me. But don't worry. I have a good lawyer. If Zara doesn't cooperate, I'll claim paternal rights. The courts don't side with dropout girls who can't keep it together. I know how to spin it to my advantage. We were sitting less than 5 meters away. Every word he said hammered another nail into the coffin of his career. You get it right, he continued. If this goes public, I'll release everything. Photos, contracts, texts. I'm not afraid. I've got proof that Zara seduced me. She sent those pictures willingly. Who's gonna believe she's a victim? Lexi didn't respond. She just nodded slightly, her hand gripping the sleeve of her sweater. And me, I almost stood up right then and there. He had just confessed to bribery, emotional manipulation, and planning to fight for custody through fabricated mental health claims. What he didn't know was that every word was being recorded, and 6 witnesses sat within arm's reach. The meeting lasted just 20 minutes, but it was all we needed to turn the game around. That evening, we gathered at my house. Nearly 10 people, parents, Lexi, even Zara. Everyone sat in silence as we played the audio from beginning to end. When it reached the part where Killian said, "I know how to make sure she loses custody," Zara stood up, hands trembling. "I won't let him touch my daughter," she said. Never. We knew then it was time to go public, but instead of rushing to the police, we took a smarter route. We submitted the entire file recording contracts photos to the university's Title IX office, which handles cases of harassment and abuse on campus. If they stayed silent, we were ready to go further. But first we wanted to see if the same institution that once protected a predator like Killian still had enough integrity left to make it right. Chapter 7, Zara stands, and Killian crumbles under the light. Monday 9:00 a.m. We parents, survivors, and allies stood outside the administrative building of the university. No banners, no press, just resolute faces holding folders of evidence, each stack nearly an inch thick. We had requested a meeting with the dean of the art department, the Title IX office, and the university's legal representative. 10 minutes later, we were ushered into a cold, bright conference room. Across the long table sat 3 people, Dr. Patricia Hoffman, the dean, her sharp eyes tinged with unease, Marcus Webb, Title IX, officer notebook in hand, and a woman in a black suit, expressionless, unsmiling, the university's legal counsel. I stood up. My voice was steady. No tremble, no stammer. We're here today to present a pattern of grooming, manipulation, abuse, and exploitation of female students committed over several years by Professor Killian. What he's done violates not only professional ethics, but the law. I placed the first evidence binder in front of them. Inside, predatory image contracts, proof of wire transfers, manipulative text messages, audio recordings of threats, photographs of Killian's private filing cabinet, and victim folders annotated with clear psychological strategies. As we each took turns presenting father, mother, friend, and eventually the survivors themselves, I noticed Marcus's hand start to shake. Dr. Hoffman had turned pale. Then it was Zara's turn. She stood up slowly, her small baby bump just beginning to show, but her gaze stronger than anyone else in that room. "My name is Zara," she said, her voice, even each word, cutting through the air like a blade. "I used to think I was the exception, that he trusted me, that I was being mentored. But now I know I was just another name on a list." She locked eyes with Dr. Hoffman. "No flinching. I am pregnant with my abuser's child. A child conceived not from love, but from manipulation and lies. And I will raise that child with the truth this university has ignored for far too long." No one spoke. Marcus dropped his pen and rubbed his forehead. The lawyer looked down at the file and exhaled deeply. Dr. Hoffman stood and left the room to make a call. When she returned, Her face was ashen. Killian is on his way here, she said. He found out about the meeting. My heart stopped. How did he know? No one answered. But we all understood Killian had someone on the inside. He wasn't stupid. He had come prepared. And then, like a scene from a thriller, noise erupted in the hallway. Through the glass, I saw Killian's shirt, wrinkled, face-flushed red, arguing with a security guard. He was yelling, "I have a right to respond. This is slander. They're setting me up." Zara grabbed my hand. Everyone stayed silent, watching. Then the lawyer stood up. "No," she said firmly. "There will be no discussion today. Based on the material presented, Professor Killian is to be placed on immediate suspension, barred from campus access, and all evidence will be handed over to local law enforcement." I sank back into my chair. Part of me wanted to stand and applaud, but another part just shivered. Because justice hadn't come from their will to do right. It came because we gave them no other choice. Zara looked at me. Her eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of release, of freedom. Chapter 8, Hope, the Child Born from Ruin and the Healing, begins. Killian was removed from campus that very day. His face twisted in rage, shouting things like, "I'll sue every single one of you. You've ruined my life." No one responded, because we all knew the life he was mourning was built on the tears of the girls he had manipulated. In the weeks that followed, the university acted with surprising speed, probably more out of fear of scandal than conscience. Killian was fired for gross misconduct. His office was sealed off. All equipment, including personal hard drives, was seized. 3 more students came forward after reading the internal notice. Each brought with them a piece of a past Killian never thought would be stitched together. The police launched a criminal investigation. The pills, the photo files, the money trail, disguised as artistic support together. They painted a picture of calculated predation, impossible to deny. Killian hired a lawyer, started fighting back, but we were already many steps ahead. The evidence was backed up. The victims were legally supported, and the once silent parent network had become an unbreakable front line. As for Zara, she was living through the hardest days of her life, but perhaps also the strongest. She chose to keep the baby not out of love for Killian, but out of love for herself. She said, "If he's already taken so much from me, then at the very least, I won't let him take away my right to become a mother on my own terms." We supported her every step of the way. My wife took a long leave from work. I switched to remote work. Our living room transformed into a space for yoga snacks and movie nights, small things that helped Zara feel safe again. And then one spring morning, Hope was born. A healthy baby girl, 3.2 kilo, with jet black hair and eyes as bright as lights in the night. The first time I held her, I didn't feel anger. I felt peace. Hope wasn't the end of a nightmare. She was the beginning of something new. From the ashes, a new life had risen. Killian eventually accepted a plea deal, avoiding a public trial, but he was forced to register as a lifetime sex offender. He was banned from working with students or participating in any visual arts projects involving human subjects. He also lost all rights to custody. Zara was granted full custody of Hope, and Killian was legally barred from any form of contact. His attempts to cleanse his image through blog posts and blame-filled essays claiming that young girls love seducing their teachers were rejected by the entire art community. Those who once praised him quietly removed his name from exhibitions. Zara changed her major to social work. She wanted to help those who had been like her, manipulated, silenced, yet still capable of starting over. She still keeps that old camera, the one that began it all, locked in a drawer. One day I saw it open. Zara was photographing Hope, crawling across the floor, holding a shimmering ball of light. "I'm not ready to go back to photography," she told me, "but today, I just wanted to capture something beautiful without asking anyone's permission." Sometimes we still gather with the other families, the ones whose daughters were victims. We call it the Hope Group. No one talks much about the past. but in their eyes, I see something. Survival isn't the end, it's the beginning. Zara is stronger than I ever imagined. She's no longer the girl in the silk robe with clouded eyes in a dorm room. Now she's a mother, a fighter, a survivor, and someone who tells her own story. And Hope, that little girl, is learning to walk now. Each tiny step crushes a little more of the fear left behind. This isn't a fairy tale ending, but it is an ending with justice healing, and most importantly, truth finally heard. And sometimes that's enough. Killian lost everything, his reputation, his career, his freedom. But we didn't celebrate that. Because real justice doesn't come from a sentence. It comes from the moment survivors look up and say, I lived, and I won't stay silent anymore. Zara isn't just raising a child. She's learning to raise herself with trust, with truth, and with a kind of love that Killian will never understand. And Hope, the little girl born from ruin, is now growing up in the light, surrounded by people who will never let her feel like a mistake. She is not a stain of the past. She is proof of survival and the power to begin again. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you've ever been a victim or know someone who's struggling in silence, remember this: you're not alone. Truth can be terrifying, but it's always the first step toward reclaiming your life. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories where justice isn't always easy, but it always begins with someone brave enough to speak up. See you next time on True Reddit Reads, where every truth has a voice.